Okay, so we have continuing on the discussion on the chariot of life. In the first lecture, we talked about the chariot is us, our life, our body, our mind, and everything we do, which is an activity, is all guided and it's represented by the movement of the chariot. Now, which way the chariot is going, how we riding it, how we are deciding who should be riding it, all this thing is an art. The spirituality is all about teaching you how to ride the chariot. Everybody rides the chariot. There are millions of chariots riding around us. You are walking around, you running around, I'm walking around. Everybody's going in whichever direction they think is right. Ultimately, no matter how much we communicate with each other, but ultimately the bottom line is which direction you think is right is the way you're gonna go. If you really break down everything down to it, no matter how many times you hear the advice, how many times you tell that, okay, this is how it should be, this and that, but ultimately your inside is your decision, and that's where you're gonna go. And lots of chariots get misplaced. There are a lot of chariots get down to the ditches, into the roads. They get misplaced, they get into misdirected, and ultimately they suffer a tragic ends of life. And we see the examples all the time. People either drink themselves to death, they get into all the desirable desires and then undesirable situations. And all these things are happening all the time. A lot of young lives are being lost, anxiety, stress, depression, suicide. All these chariots are basically driven into unwanted, undesirable positions. Could have been fixed. You could control your own chariot also. The same way, we have to look at the life as a replica of a chariot. Your body, your mind, and your soul. These are the three important aspects of you, and you have to decide who should be in charge. The spirituality says that the spirit and the matter, between the two, matter is a product of the spirit. Before the matter was created, there was nothing but energy. Energy is a manifestation of spirit. So spirit got the matter into existence. So first we had nothing but spirit. Then individual soul was created. Soul created the mind. Mind created the body and the senses and the matter and so forth. But we are caught and in the body-mind complex. We think that mind should be in charge of the chariot. So mind wants to do this and the body follows. Mind wants ice cream, we go after ice cream. They want Coke or alcohol or drugs, women, whose position in the society, money, all these things the mind wants and the body follows. Never realizing that the whole chariot is being driven into all different forces. The 10 horses which are driving the chariots are compared to the 5 senses of perception through which the whole world feeds into us. And these are the 5 senses: the eyes, the touch, the smell, taste, all these things through which we can palpate, touch, smell the world. Without these 5 senses, the world will not exist. And once we receive that at the mind level, then we make a decisions what we like, what we don't like. And we use the other 5 organs of action: the 2 arms, the legs, the tongue, through which we speak, and the 2 holes. Those are these 5 organs of action. So these are another 5 horses. Because if you had 5 organs of perception, the 5 horses, the equation will not be enough. Because otherwise it will be pointless. So God has given us 5 organs of action also. So that once you receive the sensation from the world, if you don't know anything about it, what to do about it, the information keep on accumulating, but you will have no way to act out. So God has given us this set of instruments to act out also. So the 5 organs of action are the other 5 horses. Now if you equate the whole thing, the 10 horses are driven by your mind. All the reins from everything is basically controlling, is the center, command center is the mind. So mind makes the decisions that this is good, this is not good. But that's a very low level thing. Mind, believe it or not, it's all material. Even though you cannot see it, you cannot touch it, you cannot smell it, and you think that why would a mind be material? But mind is all about matter, because mind lives in a matter, it sees the matter, acts in the matter. So mind is considered part of the earth. That's why another name of Arjun is Parth, Prithvi. Arjun is all about matter. That Arjun is you and me. We all are Arjuns. We see the earth, we like, dislike, and that decides our actions. So between the organs of senses perception, organs of action, and the mind. And that's all we know. So our chariot is driven by Arjuna. But if you look at in Gita, that's not the way it is. Krishna is sitting in the front. He's riding the chariot. And you think that such a great God is driving the chariot? Such a meaningful, low-level job has been given to Krishna, and the Arjuna is riding as if he's a king or the prince and do this and do that. But that is the correct Gita. That is the way to live life. We are not learning Gita at all. Our Gita is different. We're letting mind take us wherever we want to go. If you want to like the tasty food, you go in that route. She likes to drink alcohol, she goes that route. We are going in all these senses, all these directions. Imagine what's going to happen to the chariot. The chariot is supposed to go in a straight line and reach to the destination. And the destination being God, Paramatma, where we can reach to the state of bliss, nirvana. Each horse has taken a different route. Sometimes 2 or 3 different routes. I want position, but once I receive the position, I want to abuse it. I want to, drench myself in alcohol, or expression of ultimate my money, a show off, or whatever may be the case. I want to earn reputation. I want the horse of position. I want the horse of money. It's just a jumbled up world.
Mayor of Toronto.
Exactly, right, yeah. So just the position alone is not enough, then we want more. People who have money, then they want position. People have position, they want money. And then with money, what do they do is anybody's guess. All the horses are going scattered. Where do you think the chariot is going? Chariot is not going to go anywhere. So ultimately, if you really want to direct, the Krishna has to take over the direction of the chariot. That means the Arjun has no say in where the chariot should go. Krishna will decide where, and it's very important. If Arjun, as an archer, wants to kill the opposite side of the army, it does matter when you have 100,000 army in front of you, where the chariot is and which enemy to be killed. The enemy that needs to be killed may be right over here, but Arjun may be fighting with the low-level ranks of the soldiers. It does not achieve. You kill 1,000 of them, has no value compared to one king that needs to be killed. So the chariot position is extremely important. So if Krishna tells you, these are your enemies are inside. Your anger, your fear, your greed, your desires, all these things are within you, and you're fighting the world.
Amazing.
Look how mispositioned you are, right?
You're fighting the outside
You're
things,
fighting the outside
reflections.
world to fix your inside world. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, you're fighting the reflections of what is really to be.
Exactly, yeah. The reality is inside. The real thing is inside. And the obstructions to reach to the reality is within. And yet, we are literally squashing the mosquitoes or the flies outside, not realizing the dirt is inside us. All our efforts are driven towards fixing our physical life. And then in that process, we end up blaming the life. And the dirt and everything is outside, we think. But actually, it's inside. We never realize it. And if you really put at a major, larger implication, everything makes sense. And a lot of our activities are directed at totally wrong end. We go to the temples, we bow down. What are we doing? Nothing. It's not fixing. While we are bowing down, we're thinking to the next party we have to go to.
Yeah.
We're thinking about the friends we're going to get. What food is cooking
Or
downstairs.
mechanically, I know people,
Exactly.
my brother,
Right.
every temple he passes by with the scooter, he go like this.
Yeah, right. It has no value.
It has no value.
It has no value.
No value.
So our efforts, our chariots are being driven into total oblivion. It's not going anywhere. And this is the way we have been living our life for millions of years. And the problem is the whole society is doing it. Bowing down to from the bowing down to the temple to believing in the politicians and all these things, and believing in the wealth, and believing that money is gonna fix it, believing that the the relatives are gonna be important to us, and the next you turn around and they are not there anymore for you. All these things we have been really mistreated, we have been cheated, we've been backstabbed so many times, but we don't learn. And we never realize that efforts should be directed within, because every single action that we have outside, it is decided by your position, what your mind is in. If I am riding a chariot with a very pleasant, happy mind, then my desires to go in the right direction will be there. But if I am unhappy within, if I have prejudices, if I have a greed, if I have a fear, then I don't know what direction I'll take. If I'm suffering with fear, then to protect myself, which is the ultimate protection, I might end up killing someone, thinking that he is a threat to me. And things like that. I'm just giving an examples. The same way, if I think that I am unhappy in life, that I have no enjoyment in my life, I'm going to break down on mithais, and I'm going to eat sweet things, and I'm going to eat unhealthy foods also, thinking that they will give me the pleasure. Now, if I never thought that I'm unhappy to begin with, why would I have to do those things? So you have to realize that every action that is outside is decided by the state of your mind. If the mind is steadied into Paramatma, the happiness comes. And that's what Buddha said. Mindfulness is the literal meaning of the meditation. In meditation, you realize your steadiness, your position. You are not anybody else. We try to become somebody, but we're never realizing who we are. If you don't realize who we are, then you're going to have suffering. Then you want to be something else because you don't even know who you are.
It's a constant battle.
If I see you being successful in your life, then I want to be like you. And that's where the problem comes in. A lot of autobiographies are written. We read up and the parents tell children, read autobiography of such as Mahatma Gandhi, and read and then try to be like that. And that's totally false teachings. Nobody can be Mahatma Gandhi but Mahatma Gandhi. It's impossible. You read and you learn, you understand. But ultimately reflection has to happen within. But just by reading somebody's autobiography and try to mimic is just not going to happen. Because you don't even know who you are. So efforts should be driven more to find out who you are. But we are so busy, the time we wake up till we go to bed, and even in the dreams, we are so busy of directing our attention to the outside world that we never have a chance to go within and realize who we are. And believe it or not, once you realize who you are, you have no desire to go anywhere else because you have found yourself. But the efforts needed requires meditation and reflection within yourself. And when I say meditation, it's not just the 20 minutes you sit down. It's the reflection that you analyze every single action that you do in life is meditation. People have a wrong thinking, this guy didn't meditate and yet he's a nice guy. That's not what is life about. If that was the case, everybody would sit 20 minutes and then they would go to heaven. That's not that simple and short either. So yes.
For example, if you go to any temple, or shall we bow down or no?
No, that's not the point.
That's true.
Your thoughts are on the action.
Okay.
Forget about the action. When you reach within and you start realizing the closeness to your own self, and you reach to the God realization, you will bow down. Whether you bow down or not is not important.
Internal bow.
But bow down only if you feel like. Don't do it because everybody else is doing it. And yet at the same time, don't make it a point that I'm not going to bow down because this is wrong. That's also wrong approach.
Wrong. That's okay.
The thing is that you have to become such a soft vehicle through which Paramatma flows through you. For that, you have to abolish your concepts, your ideas, your thinkings, and then let Paramatma take you over. In meditation, you go into the deep samadhi state and you realize that Paramatma exists and Paramatma is there. And when you realize his existence, you cannot help but to bow down. You will bow down, but don't worry about it, whether you will bow down or that's not that important. More important is to take that journey within. And then whatever happens, it happens. So our ideas, our beliefs takes us in the directions. I was attending one of the pharmaceutical dinner, and then we were having a chat after the presentation and all that. So this lady, is saying like she loves her mom, and she says that I really strongly believe that I don't want her to end up in a nursing home, and I said, and I cannot imagine what will happen if she ends up in a nursing home. I said, the suffering that you will have at that time if your mom ends up in a nursing home is because what you are right now, because you have a strong belief that she should not end up in a nursing home. I will do all my best, not this and that. I said, you just don't know what is going to be the situation 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. You may be able to take care of her. You may not be able to take care of her at all. Even if you wish to have a wish is one thing, but to have a strong belief that strength of the belief is going to be this, as much equation-wise, whatever your attachment about to that belief that she should not end up in a nursing home is going to be exactly proportional to how much suffering you will go through at that time. I said, have no beliefs. Live one moment at a time. To have a belief, you require mind. And mind is the cause of suffering. Because then 10 years, 15 years down the road, if mom ends up in a nursing home, the daughter herself has
depression problem.
depression. Maybe she has a different situation. She could not take care of her. And then she's going to be suffering. From the time, right now she's suffering from fear as it is.
Yeah.
Because mom health is failing. So she knows that sooner or later she's going to end. So right now her fear has already started. And then when it actually happens, she will break down. And then she would have missed all these years of... I'm not saying enjoy. I said I will be upset too. But how long the upsetting should last? Because truly speaking, you have no control on the external situations. You have no control on your own mind. How can you have control on mom's mind? I have had patients, mom said that, no, I don't want to come and live with you. I would rather be in a nursing home. I want to be by myself. I mean, people who have lived in their freedom, sometimes they don't want to bother their children. Who knows? And that will even more break your heart. That, oh, she doesn't want me now. So ultimately, the bottom line is the beliefs are the worst. So if you believe that if I'm in the temple and I should bow down, throw that belief away. What has done that to you? What has that done? For all these years you've been to temple, what did it do to you? You sit down in a quiet corner of your house and someday analyze. Has it done anything? Has it done pleasure? Has it done enjoyment? Has it ever taken you closer to God? If the answer is yes, keep doing it. If the answer is no, then radicalize. Change your life 100% and find out which way to go. But the best way is to find yourself. At that point, because you don't have to go anywhere. There is no journey involved. That's why we talked about the Buddha's statement. जैसे जलाशय की निकली मछली मार के फंदे में तड़पती है. So jalasa is you, yourself. When the fish looks at that attraction that is thrown by the fisherman's net, the rod, and it looks at the worm wiggling, the desire has started that I want that worm. And the fish would have been happy finding whatever is available, but did not want to make any efforts of realizing its own true state, goes after that worm, gets caught, and now it's in the fisherman's net. And in that net, no matter how much you try, now that equates to the state of our mind. Now we are in the net, we think that this is the way we're going to go, so we'll escape, this is the way. So we're making efforts to go right and left. The more we make, the more we are caught up in the net, never realizing the state that we were in was the happiest state. So for us, even the water is not that far. We are the Paramatma. We just have to realize that. And once we realize that, our satisfaction, the bliss, the happiness, everything just happens right there. And that's the state we want to reach.
Isn't the net is equal to the 10 senses?
Probably, yeah. That's the
Because-
knots.
Yeah,
That's
it's
where
a
you
knots,
get entangled.
Because you go
Yeah.
within, then you're
Absolutely.
free. So the net is really representative of
of the
senses.
sufferings. Yes, absolutely. And the driving force. See, if you equate the mind to the fish, which is caught in the net, if you really equate the mind to the fish, what is the driving force of that fish? Is
Desire.
vasanas and vrittis.
Right.
Because every mind is born with its vasanas and vrittis. Now, if you look at the children, they look innocent. And they are innocent because the vasanas and vrittis have not started yet. But the seeds of the vasanas and vrittis are still there. They are born with their vasanas and vrittis from the previous life. So they are still sitting there. The environment has not properly come up. The hormones have not still kicked in. The realization up to 2 or 3 or 4 years, the realization that Coke can be fun, or the sweets can be fun, I like this and I don't like this, all these things have not started yet. So until then they are innocent. But given time, all the vasanas and all the vrittis start expressing themselves. And then the innocence is gone. And sometimes you wonder, this child used to be so innocent, what happened? What happened? Because they were still controlled by the vasanas and vrittis. They just required the environment through which to express themselves. We went through that environment and they have not. That's the only difference. So what is the answer? So should we not look at the children as innocent kids? They are innocent. But that is something that you and I can reach that state even at our age if we abolish our vasanas and vrittis. And the way to abolish the vrittis and vasanas is to realize them, not by trying to suppress them. If I'm angry and I want to get rid of my anger because that's my vritti, and then I'm going to say, next time I'm not going to be angry at all, then I'm making another effort. One part of mind is making effort to suppress another part of the mind. Instead of that, and then outside I might look that I'm such an innocent guy, I don't get angry, oh, I never seen him that angry. Inside I may have a boiling rage, but I don't want to allow it to express. Then that energy that is going to be wasted in anger is still in my mind, filled with anger towards someone or some situations, but I'm not letting it out, so it's going to come out thousands of different ways. So who knows, at some point it may come out and may put me in a much worse situation
Right.
than if I had acted out as an anger. You know, that's how some people are. They have anger, they act out, but then they're next to that they're fine. That does not justify the anger, but at least for time being, at least they're out. So sometimes it's better to let out the anger, right? But that's only half of the equation.
Right.
And then do it with your aware mind. The Buddha said that be aware of whatever you're going through. Awareness is meditation. Meditation is not a 15-20 minutes procedure. It's the awareness of all your actions that you're doing. So if you do it with awareness, you will realize that anger wasn't worth it. You realize the consequences, what happened after that, this and that. So once you realize that anger is your own enemy, it's making you say things that you would have normally would not have said.
Yeah, you would not mean it, but
Right,
you say
but you
it.
did it anyway. So literally you were out of control. So when you realize that anger made you do all these things, why would you be angry? And then little by little, I used to be very angry. So 15, 20 years back, right? I would not even, and then I read Mahavir Swami's, that anger is your enemy. Like I said, it makes you literally do and say things that normally you would not say or do. So a lot of times in arguments I used to say things, and then next day I will say, why did I say that? So he said that whatever is your external environment that is other than you, means physically other than you, is the outside environment. Anger is your inability to handle the outside world. So ultimately the ball is in your court.
To accept the situation.
Not just accept, analyze it further. Your inability to handle the external surroundings puts you yourself thinking that I should be able to change the surroundings to my requirements and to my beliefs and my standards is a wrong thinking. It's your inability. That means you have not matured out to handle every single situation that is happening outside. And the outside situation you have no control on.
Yeah, that's,
So
that's
it's
what I'm saying.
flowing.
Doesn't that mean that it's anger is really our inability to accept the situation and
Right.
environment as
But
it is?
but now focus
it's not
on
going to change just because you're if
exactly
you're mad or not.
right. But I'm just saying, like, acceptance. It may sound